Okay, welcome everyone. Again, today's webinar is the three M's, mail, messages, and money, tackling everyday tasks without mayhem. I am Julianne. I am the Director of Outreach at the Chesapeake Center, and I'm here today with Bruce, who is our amazing ADHD executive functioning and career coach. A little bit about Bruce. He holds a bachelor's in business administration and management from Strayer University and a master's degree in organizational leadership and learning with a concentration in adult education and human development from George Washington University. Currently, he is pursuing a master's in social work at the Catholic University of America. At the Chesapeake Center, Bruce provides customized support for young adults and adults with ADHD and culturally competent support for neurodivergent, BIPOC, and LGBTQ plus young adults and millennials. There's so many certifications. I could list them all, but we did have that for you on the event registration. So hopefully you got to read all of that. Without further ado, I will pass it along to Bruce.
Good afternoon or good morning, everyone, depending on where you are. Let me get up the slides. Can you all see my screen okay?
Yes.
I saw someone checking in with where they were from. Callie, thank you. You are from DC. Can we get a sense of the other folks who are on the call where you are joining us from?
Yes, Maryland, DC. Perfect. Florida. Kuala
Okay.
Lumpur. Amazing. Annapolis. Is MN Minnesota? Am I terrible? North Carolina. Are we
Or
both?
Maine? I don't
Yes. Or Maine.
know.
I know. Sorry, everyone. But
I
that's
don't
exciting.
know.
Minnesota. There we go. Minnesota.
Okay.
Yes. Virginia,
Okay.
Maryland. Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us today. Looks like we've got a good mix.
Excellent. Again, welcome to Mail, Messages, and Money, Tackling Everyday Tasks Without Mayhem. I will provide, actually, let me just go ahead and get started here. Today, we are hitting this from 4 different angles. So we'll talk about email, physical mail, messages, which will include things like notifications from social media, and money. And within each section, if you've been on other webinars with me, you know I love to talk about executive functioning and what's going on in the brain. I'll keep it like short and to the point. I won't belabor it, but I will talk about like what makes these activities difficult for the ADHD brain, talk about some of the real life implications and consequences of these deficits and how they might show up in our lives, and then talk through some solutions that you can try. At the end of each section, I will take a pause for questions. If I can answer the question right away, I will. Sometimes I might need to think about it and stew on it a bit and come back to it later, but I will definitely get to as many of the questions as I can. And we will have some time, I think we'll have time for questions at the very end. I'd like to hear from the group now, Julianne, if you could do the poll of the different, oh yeah. So I'm curious to know from the group, where do you all feel the most stuck? So I know this might be hard to just pick one, but I want to ask you to pick one. And I just want to get a sense of where, ooh, emails, a lot of emails.
Yeah, lots of email. With money as a second, physical mail as a third, and messages as a fourth at only 3%. So email's definitely a big one. I completely agree.
Okay. All right. Well, we're covering all of them. So
Yes.
this gives me a sense of what folks are struggling with the most right now. Okay. Thank you, Julian. Let's get started. Uh-oh, I'm gonna close this so I can move on. Okay. All right, here we go. I know how to work this. Oh, but before we begin, so something I'm always thinking about is how to describe or articulate what ADHD feels like. And in coaching, we talk a lot about strategies and tips and tools all the time. But there's like a it's like a negative quality of life factor with ADHD. Sometimes we call it the ADHD tax, but there's a sense of there's like always a lot going on. And I thought, oh, it kind of feels like an engine in a car. I don't know a lot about cars. I'm referring to everything under the hood collectively as the engine. And I feel like with ADHD, our engines, which can be very powerful, our brain, it can get us to where we want to go, they can get maybe sometimes overheated. And I don't know if you've ever heard a car with like a loud engine next to you, and you're like, God, it seems like their car is working really hard. Or if you've had a loud engine yourself and you like have to turn up the radio because you like can't hear it over the sound of the engine. I think our minds can be like that sometimes. And so as we get into this webinar, I thought, let me take a moment and just check in with where people are. Because there is this tendency with ADHD, this happens to me too, because I also have ADHD, where you are reading a book or you're attending a webinar and you're thinking, oh my gosh, this is going to change my life. I'm going to get all of these tools and strategies and I'm going to implement them and it's going to solve all of these problems for me. The challenge, though, is that if our lives are already feeling chaotic and we're kind of pushed to the brink, when it's time to implement those new strategies and tools, they don't stick. And then we get frustrated and we think, oh, well, what's wrong with me? I should have been able to figure this out, or why is this not working? And it's like, hey, we only got so much capacity for things in the first place. So I want to get a gauge from the group. Where is your engine, like kind of where are you coming in with your engine today? Are you feeling, thank you, Julianne, overheated, which would be at the 10 part of the scale? Or are you feeling very calm, cool, collected, which would be 1 toward the lower end of the scale?
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, oh, I was gonna say we haven't had any under four, but we have a few under four now. One coming in at a two, but for the most part, it looks like we're hovering around a seven or an eight.
Okay.
I think so. Seven, eight, and nine, to be honest. Yeah.
I see my 10s out there.
We
Yes.
see you tens. Yeah.
So the wonderful part about this webinar is that uh, depending on where you are, there is going to be something accessible for you. And what I am going to recommend, though, is that I learned how to work my slides. And if you find that you are in the 7 to 10 zone, I don't, or let me say this as best I can. I don't want you to put undue pressure on yourself to try to capture everything that we're talking about. I am sharing a wide variety of solutions and strategies for people along all different parts of the ADHD journey. So my recommendation or suggestion for you would be like within mail and messages and money, if you find one thing that you didn't know before or like one thing that you could try, consider that to be a win. We're not trying to change everything overnight. Now, if you were in the 4 to 6 or even the 1 to 3 zone, take as much as you need. You can also choose to just get one idea out of each section. That's totally fine. And I have something special for my ADHD friends in the 7 to 10 zone. Within each section, there is one slide that is bright orange. And that slide is designed specifically for you or for us. So that if you're like, these strategies all sound great, but I only have time to do one of them, or I have a limited amount of energy, You won't miss it. It'll be bright orange, and I will call it out for you. Okay, I think we are ready to begin. Uh, right before I jump into email, one more thing I will share is that the the noise that the engine can create or the additional heat that it creates. Some of that is due to things that are within our control. And email, mail, messages, and money, while they can be like annoying to talk about and to figure out, um, if we get these areas under even better control than they are now, it cuts down on that noise and it cuts down on the heat of the engine. So I know I'm asking you to dig into some topics that aren't super sexy, but it sometimes the self-care that we need actually means like doing the stuff that we don't want to do so that we have the mental space to be able to do the things that we really love and enjoy doing. Which is why we're going to get started with email,
Yes.
everyone's favorite. For each one of these, I have a couple of questions about questions you've probably asked yourself when it comes to email management. Like, why can't I just figure this out? Why can't I just respond to folks? And this is where I'll bring in briefly some of what the executive dysfunction looks like for those of us with ADHD. First, can't start. So this has to do with task initiation. And so sometimes it's difficult to even start like processing emails, or we might be feeling overwhelmed just by the sheer number of emails in our inbox. There's also the challenge of prioritization, which can be tricky for us. And so we can have a hard time figuring out which emails are like more important than the other ones and which ones we can ignore. Sometimes we just can't pay attention. Like, I don't know if this has ever happened to you, but you are responding to an email and you open up a new window and 4 hours goes by, you're getting ready to go home and you're closing out these windows and you're like, oh, I started typing this email and I never sent it because I got distracted with something else. Yeah. Uh, our working memory comes into play. Sometimes it's just hard to, um, I will often say, I responded to this in my head. Like I have done all of the work to think about what I want to say in my head. And sometimes that I think I've responded, but I haven't actually. Uh, Another challenge, can't even. Sometimes the it can feel like there's an avalanche of emails waiting to consume you. And that can create some feelings of, understandably, anxiety and stress. And sometimes we just don't even know what to do to like take action on an email that we get. We're like, what, like you might be the person who sent you the email might be somewhere else in the planning process. You're still trying to get caught up. And all of these, they seem small, but they all add to the cognitive load of just opening up an email and responding. So one thing I want to make sure this group understands is that this isn't a moral failure. Like there is nothing fundamentally wrong with you. You're not being a bad person. Email and really everything that we'll talk about today is a little bit of a minefield to get through. There's so many things that can get in the way that seem small, but they really add up to make a big difference.
I also just want to comment because I'm thinking of myself and having two different emails. Like my work email is pretty okay. But my personal email, I pulled it up just for kicks. I have 10,363 unread emails. So, two different things I'm working on. I'm going to take tips for each.
And, and I'm sure you're not alone. Yeah. I mean, I'll start there. When we see our inbox, and because of these emotional issues or the initiation issues or the focus issues, that number keeps growing and growing. That creates additional stress and anxiety for us. That's our engine beginning to overheat. It also leads to us sometimes missing deadlines or opportunities. Can impact our relationships with other folks because we are missing their communications altogether or not responding to them in a timely fashion. There's also this feeling of like just being out of control. It's like I don't have a grip on things right now. It impacts our ability to be productive and efficient. And then we get stuck in this shame cycle about like, I should have responded and I didn't, and now I feel bad, and now turns into I am a bad person, and we get this black or white thinking shift to like, oh, I'm a terrible friend or a terrible employee. I mean, I'll tell you from my own experience, it's quite insidious. I will sometimes watch my inbox, uh, the total number of unread emails creep up. And I'm like, oh, Bruce, you could just do it right now while it's still kind of manageable. But it's almost like I will like let the emails continue to come in. I'm still checking them. I'm still like seeing them. I could respond, but I don't. It's almost like it has to get to a point where it's so big and so impossible to be able to do. And my back's up against the wall that at that point it's like, oh, well, now I can do something about it. Like, and we know, if for those of us who have ADHD, that when our backs are against the wall or when it is like time to get the thing done, we know we have that ability to do it. So that's always in the back of our minds, which makes that action in the moment not feel as necessary or as urgent. But there's a couple of things we can do to mitigate this. So let's get to some of the solutions now. If you haven't already, one of my suggestions is to use just one email app. So there are um, a lot of different apps you can choose, but a problem that I found that I was having is that on my phone, I was using like Spark because I like that user experience on my iPhone. I was using the native mail app on my iPad and then sometimes the native mail app on my MacBook, but I didn't have all of the email accounts set up properly. So it wasn't like a seamless transition between moving between devices and like responding to emails. That seems small, but it can be frustrating in the moment when you're trying to like figure out, oh, I pinned this email, but in this app, it shows up differently on my iPad. If you can find one tool that works for you, I recommend just using one, having all of your emails come to the same place so that you aren't having to check multiple websites or use multiple apps to get to what you need. Next, using folders and labels. So some of the advice on this, they get really specific with the emails, with the folders, and they also make recommendations to create rules in your inbox. And if that works for you, you can do it. In my experience, the minute that I had a rule and I like couldn't find like where the email went anymore, I was like, this is not helping. This is actually hurting. If folders works for you, keep the folders super simple, like verbatim stuff I have to do, stuff other people have to do, or like things that I'm not sure like who has to do. I mean, that's too long of a title, but you get the gist of it. Keep this very simple. There's so many articles and YouTube videos like, oh, these productivity hacks for your email. And it's like, that's not always designed, or sometimes it isn't designed at all with the neurodiverse mind in mind. Keep it simple. Another tool that can help with the email management is to batch your email processing. So what I mean by this is we are often in this kind of hyper aware mode of like when an email comes into our inbox, and there's this sense that we need to jump on it right away. Now, some of us, it definitely happens where you have something urgent or you need to respond to something quickly, but probably the majority of your emails don't require like an immediate action. And every time that you are switching tasks to go back to your inbox or your phone or your iPad or whatever you got, you are losing valuable time in flow doing whatever it was that you were doing initially. So it can be helpful to say at these predetermined points in my day, I am going to look at my emails. You'll have to experiment. It may not be the same every day. For some people, it's as simple as when I come in the morning, before 11 o'clock, before or after lunch, once in the afternoon, right before I leave. You have to tweak this so that it works for your schedule, but rather than having to, another challenge we can have is cognitive flexibility, meaning like being able to switch between tasks. The less task switching you have to do, the better. So how this looks in my day is if I know I have a free hour, I'd probably work for 20 minutes, no distractions, take a 5-minute break, come back for another 20 minutes, maybe take another 5-minute break. I got 10 minutes. I can go to my email and I try to turn it into like somewhat of a game. So like I only have 10 minutes and I need to respond to as much as I can. Like that helps me like not be a perfectionist and get things done. There's different apps and services you can use to do this, but like unsubscribe from the things that you aren't using. Like the one tip that I've forgot to put in here is to try to only touch an email once. And so if I'm on a list of, I don't know, some subscription, and every day I'm having to delete it, that is just an extra finger stroke, extra cognitive load that I don't need. So what I started to do was I'd pick one thing to unsubscribe from in a day. I would take a screenshot of my like unsubscribe successful email and I'd write in paint like what the date was. And I would give it 7 days for like all of those messages to, sometimes they'll say, oh, well, we're still going to have to send you some things while we're cleaning out the queue. But I knew that if I got anything past that date, and I'm like, oh no, something's off. Like I need to go back to that person and say, I'm still on the list. Please take me off. Like unsubscribe. Something that I got from David, lost the last name already, but getting things done. He's got this model of do it, delete it, delegate it, or defer it. Or you can say it in any order that makes sense for you. But if you have something that takes, let's say 5 minutes, and I realize estimating time can be tricky for us, but if it feels like it's going to be straightforward, you have the option to just go ahead and do it. Delegating doesn't necessarily mean that it's like I am a supervisor and I'm handing it off to one of my direct reports. Sometimes someone else is better suited to respond to the email. So get it off of your plate. What I find I do, and you might do this too with your inbox, as you are scanning, you start to get a sense of what you should be doing or like what the response might be or who might be the right person to handle it, but you don't actually take that action. So you're already doing the work up here. Why not make it easy on yourself and go ahead and do it, delegate it to someone else who can, delete it, like forget about it, or defer it. I defer it really should be last because if you defer it, you will need a system to come back to look at the emails that you deferred. What I do is I have a reminder every Tuesday and Thursday for the things that I flagged for follow-up or that I pinned. I take a couple of minutes and I go over that from the previous days. So the defer really only works if you have a system to come back and check, which leads me to point number 6, scheduling some regular email cleanup time. So you can't always do all of your inbox tasks every day perfectly before the end of the day. So have a day or two or an hour within the week where you can go back over things that you were like, oh, I gotta get back to this and I have to do it. Build it into your schedule. Write it on your calendar. So it's not a task that you could overlook, but put it on your calendar and start small, maybe like 10, 15 minutes in the beginning. So if you heard all of that and you're like, Bruce, that all sounds great. I still have too many emails and this doesn't feel feasible. So the advice that I am giving or the guidance that I'm giving is for people who really feel like they are already drowning in email. You can consider doing an inbox reset, which means for all of those that are unread, you take them and you put them in one folder and you focus on only the new emails that come in. So if let's say you got 500 unread emails right now, you make a folder, you put those 500 in there. If it was me, I'd probably mark them all as read. And here's the thing, you might be thinking, oh no, like I might miss a really important email or I might miss a really important detail. And it's like, you're not even responding to them right now. That guilt of like, oh, I really gotta give everybody the same kind of response. That's a lie. Like you are trying to clean out your inbox. So this is not about perfection. This is about making progress and moving on. If you are still very afraid of tackling the inbox, set a timer for 2 minutes. There's a lot of advice on like 5-minute timers, which sometimes work. 2 minutes feels more feasible for me. You can do 5 if you want, but 2 minutes and respond to as many emails as you can. This is a good time to employ a framework like the do it, delete it, delegate it, or defer it. If you know you're going to be giving some delayed responses, like have a couple of these in a draft. This one, thank you for your email. I will respond by a certain time. Or one that I sometimes have to use. Oh my gosh, I've been cleaning up my inbox. I've had so many emails in there. Thank you for your patience. I'm just now seeing this. Let me know if it still needs a response, right? So you are not having to make that determination on your own, especially if it's more than like a week or two late. I wouldn't worry about it. And let me move my video here up. Focus on processing only the newest emails and ignore the old ones. And again, this is not advice for everybody in every situation, but the reality is that to see that really high number of emails that you have to respond to, like, that's just extra stress that you're carrying around. Like, maybe you're not at the point where you could mark all of them as read, but I do think there is some truth in this idea of if it's really important, they will email again or call or text. There's multiple ways to get in contact with us these days. I just don't want you to let that guilt drive your actions. You want to be driven by your desire to reduce clutter, or using our analogy of the car, reducing that heat, cutting down on that noise, and starting fresh. One other point about email before I see if we have any questions. Sometimes email can take a long time because we are taking a long time in our responses. There is so many of us are perfectionists that when we are responding to emails, we're making a decision between like hi versus hey or best versus warmly. These are all decisions that increase the cognitive load of the task. Something that has saved me a ton of time is to not do more than 2 rounds of revision. So I will write an email. I won't go back to fix things yet. And sometimes I'm like, oh, I really want to get this tone right. So like maybe I want to use AI to help or I want to use Grammarly. But now I change this word and I have to read the whole thing all over again. No. It's like you got 2 passes at this, and once it's done, send it. That cuts out like 50% of the time that I spend trying to get it perfectly. The best email is the one that you sent on time. It's not about being perfect. So if you find yourself getting caught in that loop of, oh, I got to get this just right. I want to be nuanced and account for all of the factors, like you can do that, but don't get hung up on getting it just right if it's at the risk of like not sending it out at all. I'll stop there to see if we have any email questions before I move to physical mail.
I just have a few comments and then we have a question there.
Oh.
So, big things that I've done, and again, this is for like everybody is different, and what works for some people doesn't work for everybody. But the smallest change I've made, and that has the biggest impact, is that I sort my inbox where it's unread first. And so for me, that has changed so much in terms of like keeping any emails that are actionable at the top. And so they're not mixed in with any of those. And that way, also, if I need to do something, I mark it unread. So it stays almost like this task list.
Mhm.
The other thing you talked about is the labels and how you have like a pin system. I love it. I'm all about external reminders. So, Google, if you have a Google, you can do snooze for later. And that has been a game changer for me. Um, Sometimes those stay snoozed and we snooze and we snooze and we snooze. So at some point, I also like the advice of like, if it was important, they would reach back out or, is this a priority even for the other person on the end, on the other side. So, and then lastly, and this is kind of my work email. Again, we talked about my personal email. I'm taking tips from this. And the next question is very similar to what I'm going to be asking you. But I think that also in work, what I've learned is even though I can do it, am I the best person to do it? Like you said, and delegating and being okay with that. Like it's not an extra burden on someone else if it is their department and kind of just, especially in my role, I have, some patients that will reach out to me because they have my email and we have this relationship and it's okay to pass them along to billing. I'm not the biller, even though I can answer your question, just to help with that clutter and know that it's okay and not feel this guilt that you're putting it on other people. So thank you. I just wanted to share some of those things that have helped me in work. And so this is basically my question. I'm a healthcare provider, and a majority of my work is responding to questions and requests from email. How do I manage the extra time that's needed for individual emails? I assume you mean like your personal emails or the emails that are not patient questions because the patient questions maybe come first. I don't know if you mean your individual inbox. I think my individual inbox.
So let me make sure I understand the question. How does this person make time to respond to? There's a lot of emails in the inbox, but each one requires a very individualized response. Is
I
that?
think that is actually what this question was, and I misinterpreted it. Thank you. You got it. Yes.
Hmm. The first thing that comes to mind is batching again. So in my inbox at any time I have emails related to in my work email related to work that like don't require any action, like some client communications that I need to do, and like maybe like some newsletters that I'm assigned to. So I if I have my way, I would take a chunk of my time in a day. So like for me, it's in the evening when my appointments are done or in the morning before they've started and batch all of the types of things that need a very uh nuanced or customized response together so that like I don't have to get out of that frame of mind if I am like, I don't know, responding to something that requires less care. So my short answer is to, if email is a big part of your job and it does require these kind of customized responses, account for that in your calendar. So have either, I don't know, this could be a good Pomodoro style approach where if you have 90 minutes or an hour to do like 15 or 20 minutes on, 5 minutes off, another 15, 20 minutes on, and it's all the same type of customized response to your clients. Um, Let me see if I get some more ideas as we keep moving through. And you might see some of the tips that I talk about in messages and in mail might also give you some ideas there.
Yeah, I think just one thing that comes to mind for me is that it doesn't really need to be that detailed of an email. One of my interns comes out, but truly, I remember coming out of college and I was like, oh, every email I have to write the most professional thing and it has to, like, and what I found is that that's actually not the case. Like most of the time, I'm just emailing people and we're just short. Going back, obviously, again, it depends. And for patients, you want to make sure that they feel heard and that you're providing that information. But I mean, even the fact that you're asking this question shows that you are thinking about them in that way. So I would just, not be so hard on yourself with, that piece. Um, so another person said, sometimes I delay an email because I don't know how to respond or I can't make a decision on how to respond. Like, for example, someone asked me to come to a gallery show. Am I going to be in the mood that day? Can I do it remotely? Am I going to make it on time? That kind of comes along with planning too. And like the ADHD, like, oh, I have this thing that I have to do. So, um,
Yeah, that's the cognitive load again of like you get an email and it's not just a straightforward response because you're like, well, I don't know how I'm going to feel on that day or what I'm going to want to do. Um, the How would I respond to this? That might be something that I was like, do I have to respond to this right now?
mm,
Can I flag this for follow-up and do it on my Tuesday or Thursday when I do my other responses? Be like sometimes, and I learned this both as a person and as a coach, we jump into problem-solving mode like really quickly. And sometimes we can just notice like, oh, like there's a lot that's coming up for me in my response to this email. Do I have to do it right now? If I don't have to do it right now and I have things that are more urgent, because I always have things that are more urgent, it's going on my Tuesday and Thursday list. Um, I have some tips in messaging about how to respond to some of these when they are emotionally charged. So if that doesn't satisfy you, I might have some answers coming up, but I'll also see if I get some thoughts as we continue to move through this.
sounds good. Last just comment that is spot on that I have done too is just responding got it or okay to an email, even if you can't get to it right away, because it shows the other person that it's not just out in the ether and that you have some sort of response. They know that you're working on it. Um,
Yeah,
love that. So,
yeah. One of my handful of my clients are project managers, and that sort of immediate, hey, I got this, or received or copy, like can be helpful to let folks know. Because if you don't give them anything, then they're in the dark. So if I do that, I have to immediately though go back and mark that email as unread. Because I won't remember to go back.
yes.
Oh, mail. This is like my least favorite. I really hate it.
The irony of
Um,
my mom asking me today if I got to save the date for one of our family friends' wedding in the mail. And I'm like, I haven't checked my mail because I live in a community. I haven't checked my mail in like a week. She was just aghast. So,
well, one of my tips is going to be if it works for you to check it once a week, but
no, it does.
I'll get there in a second. I talk a lot about executive functions. I think we know why this is difficult for a lot of us. The like a pile of mail that has like a pile of surprises inside of each envelope that are probably things that we owe or we need to do or some sort of responsibility that we have. Nothing about that is engaging to the ADHD brain. We often don't have a system for managing mail, so it ends up as like clutter around our kitchen or our living room. We don't have um, after the mail has been opened, like a place to put it, or we don't always know like what to do with it. Opening mail can be boring. And depending depending on if we have a system, we might open the mail, see what we have to do, and then forget it if we don't have a system to help us remember. And the cognitive flexibility comes in here a bit because sometimes you're going to be receiving more mail, and like if the system that you have doesn't allow it to be flexible enough to like, oh, like I might need to change this step in my routine, and then it just all kind of falls apart. That has happened to me. Um, do you see the consequences here? I'll tell you a personal story. I was like just terrified to open mail. There was something about it that I couldn't put my finger on it. It just felt like, I don't know, it was like dread. And I don't get a lot of bad mail. It was like, oh, this could be anything when I open it. And once up, there was, as I was moving, I thought I should take all of this mail that I haven't opened and opened it. I opened one of them and it was a check. It was actually my tax refund from a previous year that had, I'm going to be honest here, had already expired. So it was 6 months had already gone by. And it was for like $1,000, not an insignificant amount of money. So I had to go through the effort of like calling them and like, oh, I didn't deposit this check. And they're like, you didn't deposit the check. I'm like, you know, but like I missed out on money that I could have used because I just like didn't open the mail. So this is my orange area where I'm always overheated. So I'm going to share with you what I do. There are some suggestions that you should open your mail every day. And if that works for you, then you can do it that way. I found out for me, it's best to do it on like a Saturday or a Sunday. I will do it once a week, and I have an entire ritual around it that I'll share. But what I do is when I get the mail out of the mailbox, things that I know are junk mail, usually by the mailbox, there is a trash. And so I can put those things in the trash right away. And then I only bring up the actual mail to my apartment and I just made this up. It just happened to work. This system of fast file, act, shred, toss. I start with toss. And I will, actually, I'll go through that routine now because I cover this on the next slide. Some of the things, I'll come back to this in a second. For those of you who are struggling with this, I have two potential solutions. And this works for more than just mail, but it's to either activate or luxuriate. Activate meaning while you were doing something else that is like not as cognitively demanding. So like watching Netflix, watching YouTube, watching Love on the Spectrum, like talking to somebody on the phone and it's not a really difficult conversation. Like this is a time for you to pull out the stack of mail that you haven't gone through. And in some ways it can like kind of emotionally blunt some of the emotional responses that you might have because your mind is not fully engaged on this task. You might think, well, Bruce, I'm inattentive. And like, what if I like put the wrong thing in the wrong place? And my response is going to be, if you're already drowning, you weren't even opening the mail. Like there are some risks that we're going to have to be okay with taking. I don't think you're going to screw anything up that royally. If you do think so, Activate might not be for you. My process of luxuriating is to take something that I normally really hate doing and like turn it into a fun or enjoyable process. This would make me sound like a big nerd, but I guess I am. I bought a high quality letter opener, and I bought like my nice red stapler from like Office Space. I got a staple remover, and I have a portable shredder that you can just put over the trash. So after I've thrown out the mail that I'm not going to use, I bring in my mail, and there's something about like slicing it open with the letter opener that just feels good. And once I open it, I know like, oh, this is something I can shred, which I do immediately because the shredder is there. This is something that I need to file, which I have an accordion file for. And or this is something that I have to like take some sort of action on. I have post-it notes on my desk. I write what needs to be done, and I do that all at one time after I've gone through the list of after I've gone through all of the mail. I call this luxuriating because there are parts about this, either from a sensory perspective or from like, I do like to have systems. It like feels good. It can help to put on music. Like maybe you are somebody who would want to have a cup of tea or a glass of wine. I love soda, but I can't drink it a lot because we're not supposed to. But this is like prime time wild cherry Pepsi. So I'm like, this is my treat for myself for doing my mail this week. These other two solutions are straightforward, so I'll go through those briefly. Like, have a filing system for the important documents. So I think an accordion file is like easy. That's the one where you open it and there's a lot of the pockets. Honestly, if you just had a folder or a binder where you knew this is where your important documents were, just put it in there. Like, don't get all caught up in like, oh, I gotta write the thing on the tab and fold it and get it in the plat. No, just get it all in one place so that you know where it is. And to the extent that you can, reduce your paper mail by getting electronic statements. I didn't know this, but I had like anytime like any kind of activity happened with one of the stocks I had, I would like it would print out this whole new statement that I would get in the mail. And I'm like, I don't even need this. I hate talking on the phone. But I called the people and said, I don't really need these statements every time. Can I get this in my email? Which they were happy to do. So, what's my main point here about mail? I spent a lot of time here talking about my process that works for me. There are some recommendations to do mail every day so that it can feel more manageable. And if that works for you, then that's great. I found out this system of mail maybe just like 2 or 3 months ago, where it finally came together. So test some things out. I do think that it's helpful to have a framework so you could use this fast, right? So you got everything together, you got your shredder there, you know what you're gonna toss that need to be shredded, the private info you can shred, some stuff you gotta do, some stuff you gotta file. Take the 30 minutes and just knock it out. That'd be my recommendation. Any thoughts or questions before I move to the other ones? And I guess I'll try to get through those quicker. I realize we're almost
Yeah.
at 1 o'clock.
I mean, not really any questions, just a lot. I personally love that system that you have. I think that for me with the mail, I get overwhelmed too because there's certain things that you can't just throw away because it has important information on it. And then I'm like, I don't have a shredder, so where am I going to do this? And then eventually I just rip it up. But it's not a system. And I love just having like you get in the mindset, you have the materials and everything, a nice, fancy letter opener. And I think that we did another webinar about decluttering.
Mm.
And you talked about like pairing a task that you don't like or a chore with something that you do. Like, so I talked about like doing laundry, watching TV. And I was like, that's eye opening for me. Usually I'm just hating doing
Mm.
laundry. And that I can do, like, I can do that, I think, while watching TV because it's more mindless. I think for male, though, my personal takeaway is doing something more intentional, but having a system that I enjoy doing. So
Mm.
thank you. I appreciate
Yeah.
that.
And the joy in these, like when you get a system that works, the act of doing the thing and then not having the clutter afterwards or not having the stress afterward of like having mail or email piled up for weeks, like that begins to be the reward. So in the beginning, it is like, yeah, it is the Pepsi or the glass of red wine or whatever. But ultimately, it's, oh, wow, like the noise is coming down. Like the engine is less hot. Like I have a system for these things. Because the days that there were points in time where I was building this, where it felt like I'd have a ton of messages, a ton of email, a lot of mail because I like messed up my system one week. My place would be messy. And you kind of look around and you're like, why? Like, I thought I'd be farther along by now, and it won't take much to kind of like be the straw that broke the camel's back, so to speak. Like, let's turn the noise on all of that down so that we don't have that mental clutter and angst getting in the way. It makes your life easier. Let me get to messages pretty quickly because I know that most of us probably have a fair amount of, we might have some unread messages right now. Similar to mail, sometimes we get a response, or I remember I had recently a I'm like single and mingling, and I had some potential suitors that were like mixed into my unread messages, and I was like, ugh, like I don't even know how I want to respond to some of these, and then I had like work things mixed in there and client things mixed in there, and I was like, oh, this all just feels so overwhelming, and like I don't know where to start. And my first a natural reaction is to procrastinate. Like you don't have to do anything right now, but we can't continue to do that as a reliable system, right? Like again, we run into issues of relationships. Sometimes we miss information that's important. There's that increased anxiety and stress from mail and email. There's this sense with the text message also that you like, or like a Slack message or a DM, like, oh, it's just a DM. Like I should be able to respond like right away. And then when you don't or you can't, you might have some guilt or shame about being a bad communicator. Something that changed is it fair to say change the game? I think so. For me, is I mentioned earlier. So if I have like an hour of time, I have 20 minutes of focused work, 5-minute break, 20 minutes of focused work, 5 minutes of break. In that 10 minutes, I can do my work email. I lump on whatever personal email that I received at that time, and I will also check my text messages. So that way I am like working on these things throughout the day. I'm not saying use your company time to respond to your emails, like be smart about it. But I was like, well, I'm already taking a break for the work email. I'm already in that mode. Let me just switch to my personal email real fast, delete those or respond to those if I can. And let me also respond to messages at the same time. Oh, I already say this here. Set specific times to check and respond to messages. Because if you're like me, sometimes you're constantly looking at your phone, kind of like expecting new messages to come through. And this is where I found like getting into the weeds on the notifications that you have set up on your phone to be helpful. Like I learned on my iPhone, there is a setting, and I'm sure there's something like this in Android too, where you can get summaries of your messages, but like only at certain times during the day and only on certain days. So I don't I don't see the label on my text messages where it's like, oh, you got 17 of these, because that just stresses me out. But I know at 4 o'clock, I'm going to get a list of all of the texts that I received that I hadn't responded to from this morning that I can then respond to. Like, it helps to cut down on that stress of feeling like, oh, I'm constantly missing out, or somebody's waiting on me to respond. Like, it just helps to cut down on that angst. Legit game changer for me, voice memo. I'm a verbal processor, as y'all could probably tell because I talk a lot. I actually don't talk a lot unless I need to understand what I'm saying. Like the voice memo, it's just such an easier way to, well, one, I think it's kind of nice to hear somebody's voice, even though you typically don't like to hear your own voice, but it's just easier to just say it out. And I don't know how this works on Android, I'm sorry, but I know on iPhone now, it'll transcribe it. So even if you send it and the person can't hear the message, they can read. And so sometimes just getting it out like immediately and saying it rather than like typing the perfect message, like um, the best text message is the one that you send on time. Like it doesn't have to be perfect. Templates. So if you use like on my way a lot, or sorry, I can't come to the phone right now, you can set a template on your phone to, well, again, I should do a better job of making sure these are Android accessible. But I know for Apple, you can program, like if I type these 3 characters, type this whole message. Like, so if you're sending the same thing over and over again, that can save you a lot of time. Something that I also found, and this required me being more vulnerable, is telling people, like, even if it made me feel somewhat embarrassed in the moment, I'd say, I have a hard time managing a lot of text messages. So you're not going to get a response from me immediately when you send me a message. And for some of the guys that I was trying to talk to and to learn more about in dating, like some people like to text every day right away. And I was like, no, like that's for my mama and my best friends. Like, you're not going to hear from me all the time. So being upfront with people about like your availability and how accessible you are can like help to cut down on some of this. And also remember, I think everybody here is maybe old enough to remember when we didn't have this, like you had a house phone. And I'm not trying to, oh my God, I'm becoming the back in my day guy. Um, but we used to not have this like immediate access to people all the time. Like now it's customary for you to like feel like you have to respond. I don't buy into that. Like, I think it's you could be having some bad friend characteristics if you never respond. But this like need to respond right away feels like made up. Listen, if it's for your business or you want to respond right away, do it. But for the vast majority of them, like, do you absolutely have to respond perfectly in this moment? Maybe not. Let's say you got a lot of unread messages right now. I'll repeat that sometimes self-care looks like doing the thing that you really don't want to do so that you have space to do the things that you really want to do. Pick one message and respond to it. And here I would say, I wouldn't even do the timer because sometimes you do need some like nuance in responding. If it takes you 30 minutes to send it, hopefully it doesn't, but like take the 30 minutes and like send it. It's about building momentum. The hard part really is often just getting started. Remind yourself that you could go at your own pace, right? So there's no like, oh, I have to respond unless there's a requirement. If you're getting text messages for work and you have to respond to a client in a certain amount of time, other than that, you get to make these rules up. Like that's the fun part about being an adult. You get to go at your own pace. Or you could just say, you know what? I'm going to start fresh. I'm going to mark all of these as red And I want to try my best to, when these come in now as unread, to make sure that I am managing and staying on top of those. Have another script ready. I got a ton of scripts, and most of them are templates. Something like this. Oh, I saw your message and I meant to reply sooner. Or what could also be true, I thought I responded in my brain, but not in real life. Sorry that I missed this. That can be a way to, I mean, you just can't use that all the time. But if you're in a pinch and you need something to use one of these scripts. The important thing is to like connect. So when we get stuck in that place of guilt, shame, downward negative spiral about ourselves, like that's all going on internally, and we've done nothing to communicate with the other person about the issue that they were texting us about. So reconnect. Oh, I have in here to, as a reminder to take a break. Um, so I'm gonna stand up and maybe I want to do the tree pose real quickly because this has been a long
Got this.
session.
I didn't know you were going to do this.
Um, any
Um,
any questions before we move on to the next
I love that you
final
practice what you
session?
preach with taking breaks. I also think that, while we can't control the expectations for response time with work and certain things, I love that the honesty of just, I don't reply right away. Or I saw something that someone's like away message was like, it's normal for me to take 24 to 48 hours to process the information that you send over and then I will reply. And I wish that was our culture, but it's not, obviously. But I think that, part of it is the feeling when you get it of needing to respond right away and, you know, not having to do that. And not we weren't always this accessible. So those are my
We
thoughts.
the ADHD community, we are uh, often enthusiastic responders, and we can sometimes find ourselves overcommitted because we want to say yes so quickly. We know our history and we want to prove to people that we are reliable and that we can be trusted with information. Like for a while, I was the butt of the joke among one of my friend groups because they were like, "Oh, he like doesn't ever respond. We just kind of know that's him." And I'm like, "Oh, like that's kind of funny, but also I don't want to be known as the like unreliable friend, you know?" And so it took a while for me to find the right balance of like knowing when to respond or how quickly to respond. None of this is, I did this through like experiments and like testing different things out and allowing myself be, to not be a people pleaser and to put my own needs ahead of like what I think somebody else might need. Like the kind of life that I need to build that doesn't have my engine overheating means that I'm just not as available. And yeah, I mean there's maybe some drawbacks depending on who you talk to in my friend group, but I want to have peace of mind. I don't want to feel like I got to spend every minute like responding or being available. Like that stresses me out. And we have enough stress already. So I don't know how I got on that, but I just I think maybe
I was with you.
maybe
I
that's a
followed the whole
message to
time. I'm
folks.
like, absolutely. Yes.
Yeah,
I
maybe it's a
totally
message
agree.
to folks who are like, we want to get it right, you know, and I want to honor that, but like you also have to do what works for you. Um, and the ADHD tax of always having something going on or something that's late or something that you got to do or that you're worried that you're going to forget, that's enough. Like I don't need anything else making that worse. Let's get to the end here. Money. Challenges with money management. In my design of this, I had that I would get some of these from the group, but I will go ahead and share what some of these are. Um, I don't even like the B word, budget. But that's especially hard for a lot of us. Um, if we don't have a system for mail or managing email, our records can be very disorganized. We have a tendency to maybe do a little bit of impulse spending. We see something that we want, we think, oh, like this is something that I need to have right now, and we do it. We might forget to pay bills, and then we end up having to pay late fees, potentially have it negatively impacting our credit and the emotional regulation. So sometimes our history with money can make us feel less confident in our like current decisions that we're making around money. And again, we got more stress and anxiety, and we don't need any more of that. Oh, and I guess the other executive function that can make this, or the item that's related, is this idea of temporal discounting. So it's if something is right in our face right now, we can see and feel and get the value of it. But when it's like farther out into the future and you're like, oh, you want me to like save for something that's like not right now? And like I have this money burning a hole through my pocket and I could buy this thing that I want, and you're telling me not to do that? Like that's really tricky for us. I am going to recommend, again, I don't like the term budget. I do have recommendations on like, I've used almost all of the apps. I think what has been most effective for me is to, and this is not very exciting, write down all of the expenses and add them up and subtract that from how much I have coming in every month. And what I like to do is to take that amount, so maybe that's 2,000 bucks left, and divide that over 30 days. And so in my mind, I'm thinking like, oh, I have like 66 bucks a day maybe to like spend on what I want to spend it on. Like having a daily focus of like controlled spending rather than like I used to use YNAB for a while, and it's a great tool, but like it takes a lot of effort. And I just found it easier to know here's how much money I have left after my bills are paid, and I can figure out a way to allocate it, whether that's on a weekly basis or a daily basis. I'd imagine most of you have this set up already, but to set, if there are any bills that aren't on auto pay, go ahead and set them up now. I mean, and if you're like, oh, I'm a freelancer, I'm a gig person, maybe the money's not there, I can understand. But for things that you know you're going to have to pay, like, don't risk it. Don't risk the late fee. Oh, I have budgeting apps and tools in italics because they can be helpful for some people. But sometimes you go through all of that work of like setting it up, and then if you don't stick with it, if there's not a structure behind it, like if you're not accountable to like a coach or your spouse or your like someone to like help you build this new habit, like I don't want any more of those experiences of getting all riled up about something and then I don't finish. The money check-ins. This is a great place to luxuriate. So if this is something that if money is a touchy subject, like find a way to build a ritual around it that you enjoy or look forward to. Because we do tend to have more of a short-term orientation, we sometimes don't set financial goals. And something I'll include in the resources, I'm just now reminded of this. There was a webinar with a financial planner on attitude about like how to name your budget categories so that they motivated you to save. I'll find that link and include that in the resources. But also something important here, like talk to a professional. Like if you are in a situation where like it's not uncommon for a lot of us with ADHD to have mounting debt, to have problems with organization, to have problems with saving and planning. Like if you have the means, like hire a professional to get some help. Like you don't have to do it alone. Again, this is not a moral failure. This is you actually like that's good self-awareness to know like I'm gonna need to get some help with this because I can't do it on my own. Some of this you might already know, but I included it anyway. Um, while we still have TikTok, did you know that there are channels that you could go to Trader Joe's like with them, they tell you what to get. You go home, they tell you how to cook it and the meal prep. So if you're gonna be doing a little bit of doom scrolling, add in some mindful scrolling and look for folks who can help you with doing the grocery shopping piece and making the list piece. The
Yeah.
wish list. This is something that I implemented to cut down on impulse buying. If you ask these questions to yourself, by the time you get to the second question, you're like, ugh, it's obvious that I don't need it, but maybe I still want it. And what I do on my phone, on my reminders app, if there's something that I want to buy, I'll put it there and like make a follow-up date for maybe 30 days to see if like I'm still as interested. And if I am, maybe I'll buy it. And if not, then I know, oh, I'm glad I didn't buy it because a month later I wouldn't have been as excited about it. For those of you who've been avoiding it altogether, just log in to check your bank account. Like just log in and like see what the money is giving. Choose a bill and like make sure that the account that it's coming from, there's money to cover it. And think about canceling one subscription. I mean, this is that good for everyone, but sometimes it can, if you haven't checked the account in a while, you're kind of like operating in that place of this will all come together. It won't. Like, so log in and check now if you have time. I think we are at time.
We are. So we don't have necessarily a hard stop, but Bruce and I also went back and forth of how much we could talk about money because there's so many layers to it and so many things we could get into. But I so appreciate the quick tips that you gave. And a few people just commented that there are some financial planners who do pro bono work. Someone said that they just got a financial planner and they had no idea how much they could do for you.
Hmm.
That living not paycheck to paycheck is possible. I think also a lot of employers, like if I think through Paychex, if you have a Paychex account, they offer like free financial advising. So it's also just, something to look into. But um, yeah, I think that this is a big one and a hard one for a lot of everyone. I think everybody struggles with this, and then add on the ADHD component and, but yeah, I appreciate everything that you said, Bruce. And I think we probably need to do another one on money. But yeah, does anyone have any last minute questions for Bruce about any of these topics?
Yeah, we can do another one. It'd be cool if we could get a financial planner to join.
Yeah,
So we have to do some planning for that. But I mean, that was the second most requested topic. I mean, from our poll.
yeah.
So
I think that is where we will probably end this because I don't see any questions. But I think we need to do another one and we'll bring on a financial planner. I think that's key. Thank you guys so much for spending your lunch with us. Thank you, Bruce, again, for just an amazing,
sure.
informative, practical, for sharing your own experiences, which makes this so relatable as well. And thank you to everyone in the chat for sharing your resources and what works for you. We'll follow up with the recording, the slide deck, any resources. I'll go through the chat that I'll send over, and then Bruce mentioned some great ones. So we will compile this and send out to you all. But thank you so much, and stay tuned for future topics. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks,
Bye.
everyone.